On the set of Star Trek Nemesis, a legend looks at a rookie and sees a ghost. Sir Patrick Stewart watches this twitchy, silent kid named Tom Hardy and makes a cold-blooded prediction. This kid is done. He'll never be heard from again. And for a while, Stewart was right. But what Stewart didn't see was that Tom Hardy wasn't just a bad actor. He was a dying man. He was a man waking up in pools of his own blood on London sidewalks. A man losing a war to the needle and the bottle. Fast forward a decade, and that failure is the most magnetic force in Hollywood, hiding his face behind masks and stealing movies from Leonardo DiCaprio. But then, at the height of it all, he vanishes again. Not because he failed, but because he chose to. This isn't just a comeback story, it's a manual on how to conquer the world and then have the balls to walk away from it. But before we begin, don't forget to like the video to help it reach more people, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming videos.
What's your name? What do I call you?
Does it matter?
I think a lot of people will have a certain image of you from your films, but perhaps be surprised that you have had these demons.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
Used a lot of drugs, a lot of drink, made a lot of mistakes, upset a lot of people, got arrested a lot.
Why do we force? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
Giving up the hopes of ever being in something like Warrior, or being in something like Inception, or Batman, that was never going to happen.
He's one of the most brilliantly gifted screen actors of our generation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the fabulous Tom Hardy.
The year is 2003. The setting is the high-budget, high-pressure set of Star Trek Nemesis. On one side of the camera stands Sir Patrick Stewart, the embodiment of British theatrical prestige, a man of discipline and Shakespearean gravity. On the other side is a 25-year-old kid with hollow eyes and a restless energy that felt like a ticking time bomb. This was Tom Hardy's big break, his ticket to the A-list. But instead of networking or showing off, Hardy was a ghost. He stayed in his trailer, avoided eye contact, and barely whispered a word to his castmates. To Stewart and the rest of the veteran crew, it didn't look like method acting or shyness. It looked like professional suicide. When the camera stopped rolling and Hardy walked off the set for the last time, Stewart didn't offer a handshake or a see you at the Oscars. Instead, he turned to the producers and dropped the verdict that would haunt Hardy for years. He said, and I quote, "Here is someone who I think we will never hear of again."
As I would anyway with any actor, any younger actor, I felt that it was absolutely essential to try to create, along with Stewart, on the set, the atmosphere, the best atmosphere in which he could be relaxed and do his best work. Off the set, it was another matter.
Stewart wasn't being cruel. He was being observant. He saw a young man who seemed completely disconnected from the world, someone who lacked the social grace and the fire required to survive the Hollywood Shark Tank. He saw a career that was DOA, dead on arrival. But here's the thing Patrick Stewart didn't know. Tom Hardy wasn't just being difficult, he was drowning. While the industry saw a rising star playing a villain, Hardy was playing a much more dangerous game in real life. He was a functioning addict, trapped in a cycle of self-destruction that made the coldness of space look like a summer vacation. Stewart's prophecy was half right. The Tom Hardy on that set did disappear, but what replaced him was something much more terrifying and brilliant than anyone could have imagined. The prophecy of failure was unfolding exactly as predicted. By late 2003, the phone stopped ringing. Hollywood had seen the weird kid from Star Trek and decided he wasn't worth the headache. But for Tom Hardy, losing a movie role was nothing compared to losing his soul. He wasn't living in a penthouse. He was living in the gutters of London. This was the dark night before the Cape. A man fueled by crack cocaine and a bottle of spirits, wandering the streets like a ghost looking for a place to collapse. The adrenaline of fame had been replaced by the cold, hard shivers of withdrawal. One morning, the world finally broke him. Hardy woke up on a London sidewalk, face down in a pool of his own vomit and blood. He didn't know how he got there. He didn't know who he had fought or what he had lost. This wasn't a glamorous rock star moment. It was pathetic. It was the absolute bottom of the pit. When he finally crawled to a hospital, the doctor looked him in the eye and delivered a reality check that hit harder than any script. If you keep going like this, Tom, you aren't going to make it to 30. You're done.
So you would black out?
Of course.
And this was what, alcohol?
Yeah, and everything else. Yeah.
Everything else? What is that, all the different substances available?
Yeah.
Most of them?
Everything.
Wow. Everything? All in one evening?
Probably, yeah.
Wow. It's lucky you're still here.
Yes. And I'm very grateful to be here, you know, it's no joke.
That was the turning point. At 25, while his peers were building their careers, Hardy was rebuilding his basic humanity. He checked into rehab, and for the first time, he surrendered. He realized that the monster inside him, the one that made him get arrested for joyriding with a gun or getting kicked out of school, was the same monster he could use for acting, but only if he could put it on a leash. He stopped everything. No drinks, no drugs, no excuses. He was a blank slate again, but with a reputation so toxic that no one in the industry wanted to touch him. He had to climb out of the hole inch by painful inch.
And I was afforded all the privilege that anybody could, you know, possibly want for as a child growing up. But for some reason I went off the rails, and I'm very much a product of there's an expression called "you are what you is," which my defense for a car theft once was, you know, I would never steal a car because why would I steal a car? I went to a nice school. You know, my parents are, you know, well-to-do.
The comeback didn't start with a red carpet or a multi-million-dollar contract. It started with a humble yes to anything that came his way. Tom Hardy was clean, but he was also broke and blacklisted. The industry has a long memory, and the Star Trek disaster was still fresh. He had to go back to the basics, taking tiny roles in projects like Layer Cake and Marie Antoinette. He wasn't the star, he was the background noise. But something had changed in his eyes. The frantic, drug-fueled desperation was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity. He was no longer trying to be a celebrity. He was trying to be a craftsman. During this period, Hardy existed in a state of professional purgatory. He was working, but he wasn't back. Then came 2007 and a small TV movie called Stewart, A Life Backwards. He starred alongside a young Benedict Cumberbatch, playing a homeless, drug-addicted man with a traumatic past. It wasn't just an acting job, it was a mirror. Hardy pulled from his own memories of those London sidewalks, the vomit and the blood. He gave a performance that was so raw, so uncomfortable to watch, that it sent a shockwave through the British acting community. People started whispering, is this the same kid who almost ruined his life 4 years ago? This was the reintroduction of Tom Hardy. He had successfully transformed his personal trauma into artistic fuel. He proved that he could handle the darkness without letting it consume him. But the industry still viewed him as a character actor, someone you hire for the fringe, not the center. They didn't realize that the monster on the leash was getting stronger. Hardy was about to undergo a physical and mental transformation that would make the world forget Patrick Stewart's prophecy forever. The era of the unrecognizable Hardy was about to begin.
And I'd kind of given up acting in many ways because I felt that I've been doing it for 10 years and I couldn't convince anybody that I couldn't convince anybody that I could to do it on a bigger level. The stories went around. It was.
If Stewart, A Life Backwards was Tom Hardy's spiritual confession, the 2008 film Bronson was his declaration of war. To play Britain's most violent and notorious prisoner, Hardy didn't just study a script, he underwent a physical mutation. He gained nearly 40 pounds of raw muscle, shaved his head, and grew a mustache that became as iconic as the man himself. But the transformation went deeper than the skin. He spent hours visiting the real Michael Peterson, Charles Bronson, in high-security prison, absorbing his voice, his erratic movements, and his terrifying blend of charm and brutality. The result was a performance that bordered on insanity. Hardy was a one-man whirlwind on screen, naked, covered in grease, fighting guards and speaking to the camera like a deranged circus ringmaster. It was a lightning-in-a-bottle moment. The industry stood still. This wasn't the skinny kid from Star Trek who couldn't look people in the eye. This was a force of nature. Even the real Bronson was so impressed that he cut off his own trademark mustache and sent it to Hardy to wear in the film. It was the ultimate endorsement from one monster to another. Bronson changed the narrative. It proved that Hardy could carry a movie with terrifying charisma, but it also cemented a recurring theme in his career, the disappearance of the self. In Bronson, Tom Hardy was gone. There was only the spectacle of violence and the mask of a madman. This performance caught the eye of a director who was looking for exactly that kind of intensity, a man named Christopher Nolan. The gates of Hollywood's elite were about to swing wide open, and Tom Hardy wasn't just walking through them, he was kicking them down. In the world of cinema, there is before Nolan and after Nolan. For Tom Hardy, Nolan was the architect who didn't just give him a job, he gave him a throne. It started with Inception in 2010. While the world was obsessed with the spinning tops and the dream within a dream complexity, Hardy walked onto the screen as Eames, the forger. He was smooth, witty, and effortlessly cool, standing toe-to-toe with Leonardo DiCaprio. This was the moment the general public realized Hardy wasn't just a brute or a madman from indie films. He was a movie star with the charm of an old-school Hollywood legend. But Nolan saw something deeper in Hardy, a unique ability to communicate through constraints. He realized that Hardy didn't need his whole face to act. He could command an entire audience with just his eyes and his voice. This led to the ultimate challenge, Bane in The Dark Knight Rises. Taking over the villain mantle after Heath Ledger's Joker was a suicide mission for any other actor. But Hardy leaned into it. He became a mountain of muscle, his face strapped behind a menacing metallic mask, breathing like a broken engine. He turned a comic book villain into a philosophical nightmare, proving that he could dominate the biggest franchise on Earth without ever showing a smile. The Nolan effect didn't just make Hardy famous, it gave him a signature style. He became the man Hollywood called when they needed someone who could be silent but violent, someone who could convey 1,000 words through a single grunt. He was now at the absolute top of the food chain. Patrick Stewart's prophecy wasn't just wrong, it was dead and buried. Tom Hardy had achieved what Stewart thought was impossible. But as the spotlight grew brighter, the internal monster that Hardy had fought so hard to tame began to feel the heat. Success was bringing its own set of demons.
Here is the paradox of Tom Hardy. He is a superstar who doesn't want to be the lead. While every other actor in Hollywood fights for the #1 spot on the call sheet, Hardy found his true power in the shadows of the supporting role. There's a psychological reason for this. In a lead role, you have to be the hero. You have to be relatable, likable, and carry the moral weight of the story. But in a supporting role, you can be a monster. You can be weird. You can be a thief. And that is exactly what Hardy did to the biggest names in the business. Look at The Revenant. On paper, it was Leonardo DiCaprio's movie, his long-awaited Oscar moment. But when Tom Hardy walked onto the set as the treacherous John Fitzgerald, the dynamic shifted. DiCaprio himself asked for Hardy, knowing that he needed an antagonist who was so magnetic, so terrifyingly human, that it would push his own performance to the limit. Hardy didn't just play a villain, he played a survivalist, whose every grunt and mumble felt more real than the freezing scenery around him. He stole the movie so effectively that he earned his first Oscar nomination for it, often overshadowing the very man he was supposed to be supporting. This became his golden rule. The secondary role is where the freedom lies. Whether it's Alfie Solomons in Peaky Blinders or his dual role in Legend, Hardy excels when he can operate from the flank. Even when he is technically the lead, like in Mad Max Fury Road, he functions as a silent passenger in someone else's story, Charlize Theron's Furiosa. He is a scene stealer by trade. He doesn't want the responsibility of the crown. He just wants to be the most interesting person in the room while someone else wears it. But this preference for the outsider perspective started to bleed into his real-life behavior, leading to a collision in the middle of the desert that almost ended it all.
Success has a price, and for Tom Hardy, that price was paid in the scorched sands of Namibia. Filming Mad Max Fury Road wasn't a movie shoot, it was a psychological war zone. Hardy was stepping into the massive boots of Mel Gibson under the direction of George Miller, a man who shot without a traditional script, relying on storyboards and pure chaos. The pressure was suffocating. Hardy, ever the perfectionist, but still carrying the damage of his past, began to unravel. He wasn't just playing Max, he was living in survival mode. He became notoriously late, sometimes showing up 3 hours after the call time, leaving the entire crew and his co-star Charlize Theron waiting in the blistering heat. The tension finally exploded in a moment that has become Hollywood legend. When Hardy finally strolled onto set after a long delay, Theron, a disciplined professional and a new mother at the time, had reached her limit. She screamed at him, calling him disrespectful and demanding he be fined $100,000 for every every minute he wasted. Hardy didn't back down. He charged toward her, shouting, "What did you say to me?" The atmosphere became so toxic and aggressive that Theron requested a producer to act as a chaperone for her own protection. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. They were two parents fighting in the front of a car while the world watched the wreck happen.
Charlize said she felt threatened on set by Tom's bad behavior. According to the book, Charlize and Tom screamed at each other after Tom made her wait on set for hours. Charlize also had a female producer with her at all times because she was scared of Hardy's aggressiveness.
Years later, Hardy would offer a rare, humble apology. He admitted he was in over his head and that the pressure of carrying such a legacy was overwhelming. He realized that Theron needed a better, more experienced partner, someone who didn't let their internal demons dictate the call sheet. But this era of madness taught Hardy a vital lesson. The spotlight was getting too hot. The more famous he became, the more he felt the need to hide. He was about to enter a phase where the mask wasn't just a costume, it was a sanctuary.
I have to apologize to you because I got frustrated. And there was no way that George could have explained what he could see in the sand when we were out there.
Well, in an email to the book's author, Tom said that he was, quote unquote, in over his head and that Charlize needed a better, more experienced partner in him. He added, quote, "Now that I'm older and uglier, I could rise to that occasion."
If you look closely at Tom Hardy's filmography, you'll notice a bizarre, almost obsessive pattern. From Bane to Mad Max, from Dunkirk to Venom, and even the muffled face of Fitzgerald in The Revenant, Tom Hardy spent over 60% of his peak years hiding his face. In an industry where a leading man's face is his multi-million-dollar currency, Hardy treats his like a secret. It's a move that defies every rule of stardom. Most actors want to be recognized in the grocery store. Hardy wants to be a ghost. He uses masks not just as a creative challenge to act with only his eyes, but as a psychological firewall between his private self and the public product. There's a famous line from his role as Bane, "No one cared who I was until I put on the mask." For Hardy, this is more than a script line, it's a lifestyle. He discovered that the more he obscured his physical identity, the more he could explore the raw, guttural truth of a character without the baggage of Tom Hardy, the celebrity, getting in the way. He became a master of physical language, the tilt of a head, the heaviness of a shoulder, a grunt that conveys more than a monologue. He proved he could dominate the global box office while being essentially invisible. It was his way of saying, take the performance, but leave the man alone. But this untraceable nature started to reflect a deeper shift in his soul. After the chaos of the Mad Max years, the hunger for Hollywood's validation began to fade. He realized that being the center of attention was a trap that led back to the dark places of his youth. He didn't want to be a typecast handsome lead. He wanted to be an enigma. And so, just as the world was demanding more of him, Tom Hardy began his most ambitious performance yet, a slow, deliberate disappearance into the English countryside. The mask was no longer enough. He needed a fortress.
But Tom's a really wonderful actor, and he was always able to convey so much despite having, so much of his face being covered.
In 2018, while the rest of the world was chasing likes and viral moments, Tom Hardy was packing his bags. He left the noise of London and moved his family to the quiet, rolling hills of the English countryside. This wasn't just a change of address, it was a strategic retreat. After meeting Charlotte Riley on the set of Wuthering Heights, Hardy found something Hollywood could never give him, a reason to stay home. He became a ghost in the industry, choosing to raise his children in such secrecy that even their names remain a mystery to the public. For a man who spent his youth in the chaos of police cells and rehab centers, the silence of the country was the ultimate luxury. The global pandemic only deepened this isolation. While other stars were filming relatable videos from their mansions, Hardy was reevaluating the very meaning of his life. He looked at his career and realized it wasn't a race anymore. He didn't need to be in every blockbuster. He didn't need the stress of a leading role like Capone, which many critics felt was shaky and lacked his usual fire. He realized that the job of a father was harder and more rewarding than any script Christopher Nolan could ever write. He stopped being a movie star and started being a man who just happened to act for a living.
What are you trying to do, man? I mean, you went from Mad Max to this. I mean, are you trying to break some sort of shooting endurance record?
I'm just trying to stay gainfully employed.
This shift explains why he's been missing from the spotlight. When he does appear, like in The Biker Riders, it's often in an ensemble cast where he isn't the sole focus. He's no longer trying to prove Patrick Stewart wrong. He's forgotten Stewart even existed. He's reached a level of financial and personal security where he can afford to say no to the machine. He's happy in his garden, happy with his dogs, and happy being the mystery man that the world can't quite pin down. But even in seclusion, his competitive spirit found a new secret outlet that shocked everyone.
In 2022, a small local martial arts tournament in Milton Keynes, England, witnessed something surreal. A man walked onto the mat wearing a blue gi and a familiar, intense gaze. It wasn't a celebrity lookalike, it was Tom Hardy. Without any PR teams or cameras, he had entered a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition under his real name. He wasn't there to sign autographs, he was there to fight. He won every match, took home the gold medal, and quietly slipped back into the shadows. This is the new Tom Hardy, a man who seeks the grind but hates the fame. He found in Jiu-Jitsu what he used to find in drugs and chaos, a way to be present, a way to struggle, and a way to be humbled.
I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Let me know when you finish.
I just want to, finish, and I just want to go and roll and get all sweaty in spandex.
With anyone in particular? Or?
With everyone.
With everyone?
With everyone, yeah.
So looking back at that cold day in 2003, did Sir Patrick Stewart win? Technically, the actor Stewart saw that day did die. That version of Tom Hardy was a self-destructive ghost that never stood a chance. But what rose from the ashes was something far more dangerous to the Hollywood status quo, a man who conquered the world and then decided he didn't want it. Today, Hardy picks his projects like a collector, not a climber. Whether he's doing Venom for the paycheck or Taboo for the art, he does it on his own terms. He has successfully navigated the most difficult role of all, being a sane man in an insane industry. Tom Hardy's story is a manual on how to wear a mask without losing your face. He is the ultimate supporting actor of his own life, letting his family and his peace of mind take the lead role. He proved that you can hit rock bottom, survive a death sentence from a legend, and still end up on top, even if the top is just a quiet house in the country and a gold medal from a local gym. Patrick Stewart said we'd never hear from him. He was wrong. We hear him in every grunt, every muffled line, and every silent victory. We just don't need to see him to know he's there.
I'm happy, I think.
Good.
Yeah, and grateful. Very grateful to be alive and to be privileged. And to be sat alongside you.
Oh.
And here with you and you.
Thanks for watching to the end. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.